One of the challenges with the prophetic books is trying to get any sense of structure, particularly the longer ones, which seem a collection of messages. And since we have read of Isaiah's call on Friday, if you're following these actually on the days they're recorded or produced, released even, since then we've had the sign of Emmanuel, the prophecy about the coming Messiah, Assyria being the nation who God is going to use to judge Israel. Isaiah's children then are given specific names with a weighty meaning, and then God's anger against Israel is repeated, but also then his judgment on Assyria, the ones who he's going to use to judge Israel. And so it seems to be leaping around, and then we land into chapters 11 and 12. And what's happening is lots of themes are being developed, and we keep returning to them, and we're bobbling around, but there are certain echoes coming through consistently. I guess it might be like an orchestral piece where it seems very long, and when you're first listening it's difficult to work out what's going on, but then there is kind of repeated themes coming through, coming out at different times, and some of them almost repeated ad nauseum because actually we need to get these messages. Anyway, today, 11 and 12, there's a real joy to these messages, so let's have a read and see what we can discover. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse, from his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord, and he will delight in the fear of the Lord. Just pause there for a second. We've heard this mention of a shoot and a branch previously in one of the other judgment passages. Everything was going to be destroyed apart from the stumps of the trees, but from those stumps, from that root, was going to come something fruitful. And here's the picture. From what seems to be the remnants of Israel is going to come one who is going to live a very different life. God's Spirit's going to be in him, and he's going to delight in the fear of the Lord, the one thing that all of Israel have failed to do, even the best of its kings have got wrong. And then he goes on to describe him, picking up again in verse 3, he will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy, with justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. You'd be a little bit worried in some ways, wouldn't you, about someone who's judging without actually using their eyes and deciding without using their ears, because those are our senses for making sense of what's going on around us. But when you think about judgment and crime and wickedness, so much is what we can't see and can't hear. It's the thoughts of people's minds, it's the intent of their hearts, it's what goes on behind the scenes, the plotting and the planning and the scheming. And so actually it's very difficult, and yet here is one who isn't bound by those senses and is able to judge them with righteousness, and is going to give decisions for the poor of the earth, the very thing that Isaiah has been constantly challenging Israel over. They're taking advantage of the poor, and here is one who is going to bring justice for the poor. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. What is it that in a sense holds him together? What's at core of his being? It's his righteousness and faithfulness. There's a holiness, there's a justice about this person, but also a faithfulness, a consistency, a reliability, so unlike all his people. And because of this then, some other images come as a result of what he's going to bring. Verse 6, the wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. I mean, these are carnage images, aren't they? You put a wolf with a lamb, what's going to happen? You put a leopard with a goat. You put a lion with a calf and a child. It's going to be messy. And yet actually as a result of this stump, this branch of David, this promised one, there is going to come to this world a peace. Peace that these images cultivate in a way that is quite surprising and shocking and attractive. The cow will feed with the bear. Their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like an ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. There is a day coming when peace is going to be restored to this earth. The decay and death that came with the fall are going to be dealt with. And there's going to be a oneness and harmony about creation that is going to be utterly beautiful. There's going to be no more harm or destruction on God's holy mountain, the place where he dwells with his people. The earth is going to be filled with the knowledge of the Lord. That picture of the knowledge of the Lord is not knowledge about the Lord, but that intimate relationship with him. his people are going to be one with him again, just as the waters cover the sea. In that day the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples. The nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious. So again, this promise of the wonderful future is not about our general growth in technology and cleverness and evolution. No, it's all down to the root of Jesse, this descendant of David, this promised one, who's going to be the one who rallies people to himself and be the centre of that peacemaking and that glorious rest. Remember, it's Jesus who says to people, "Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." He's the one who's crucial to this image coming true. In that day the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of his people from Assyria, from Lower Egypt, from Upper Egypt, from Cush, from Elam, from Babylonia, from Hamath, and from the islands of the Mediterranean. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from 4 quarters of the earth. Ephraim's jealousy will vanish and Judah's enemies will be destroyed. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, nor Judah hostile towards Ephraim. They will swoop down on the slopes of Philistia to the west. Together they will plunder the people to the east. They will subdue Edom and Moab, and the Amorites will be subject to them. What's the picture now? So we've gone from creation at harmony to actually all God's people together. The people who are going to be scattered in exile as a judgment for their sin are going to be pulled together. They'll have been scattered in all the nations. They'll all be drawn out from amongst the nations, but actually the nations are going to come as well. People from all nations are caught up in this image of victory and togetherness and the conquering band of God's people. The Lord will dry up the gulf of the Egyptian sea. With a scorching wind he will sweep his hand over the river Euphrates. He will break it up into 7 streams so that anyone can cross over in sandals. The image of water is often in the Bible the uncontrollable, the dangerous, the great deep that we can't manage, and yet God's going to deal with all of those dangers. Those are going to be absent in this wonderful future that's being promised. The water will not be the place of great darkness and danger. There will be a highway for the remnant of his people that is left from Assyria, as there was for Israel when they came up from Egypt. In that day you will say, "I will praise you, Lord. Although you were angry with me, your anger has turned away and you have comforted me." So there's a response now to this vision of the future, this day of the Lord, when there's going to be praise, because God's anger has been dealt with and his people are now comforted. Surely God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord himself is my strength and my defence. He has become my salvation. With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. Here again is the point of this. This is not our great achievement as human beings. All we have achieved is making a mess. We might get clever at making the mess, but we still make a mess. But the salvation is of God, and our escape and release and hope comes through trust in him. We don't need to be afraid because he's the one who is saving. He is our strength, he's our defence, he's our salvation. That life-giving water that we long for, that nourishes the deep parts of our souls, is drawn from his wells of salvation. It's Jesus that's the answer in all of this. In that day, same day, the day of the Lord, the day that Jesus works, you will say, "Give praise to the Lord, proclaim his name, make known among the nations what he has done, and proclaim that his name is exalted. Sing to the Lord, for he has done glorious things. Let this be known to all the world." These are the days we're in, where this message is being spread around the whole world. It's being heard across the planet today. The name of the Lord is being proclaimed, and what he has done is being shared. The great news that Jesus came and lived and died. He lived the life that we can't live. He died the death that we deserve, that we might be rescued. We're singing to the Lord his praises. This great news is going out to a lost world, and people are being invited to join in and receive this salvation. Shout aloud and sing for joy, people of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel among you. And this is our song as Christians. This is our delight and our joy. We have so much to praise God for this one who is from the family line of David, who out of the disaster and ruin of Israel, because they could not keep God's promises, they could not live up, they could not keep God's standards, they could not live up to the life they were called to live. But out of that remnant, out of the scattered nation that's gone into exile because of judgment, comes this one. It is Jesus, and he brings a wonderful future, creation at harmony, people at harmony together, a life of flourishing and wholeness, a whole new world where there's no more death or decay. And so as Christians we have got plenty to sing about. We're going to listen to a song now that celebrates so many of these things. The invitation to this wonderful gospel feast, to step into all that God has done for us. If you're a Christian this morning, rejoice in our salvation. Just capture again, in the midst of the struggles and trials of living in a broken world, just what a wonderful salvation we have. If you happen to be watching and you're not a Christian, you're invited to this feast. You're invited to step into the salvation of Jesus through trusting in him. And for those of us who are, let's go out into the world today proclaiming this good news, inviting others to the feast too.
We have been called to the feast, to come without money and need. There's strength for the weary and hope for the poor, here at your table, oh Lord.
Welcomed with arms open wide. You feed us with bread and with wine. Your mercy is seen and your promise is heard. Here at your table, oh Lord.
Blessed are all you have called to the table, the lost and least will taste and see you are faithful, forever faithful. The wolf will lie down with the Lamb. Your glory will cover the land. We taste of your goodness, the riches in store, here at your table, oh Lord. Blessed are all you have called to the table, the lost and least will taste and see you are faithful, forever faithful. Blessed are all you have called to the table, the lost and least will taste and see you are faithful, forever faithful. Oh, oh. We have been called to the feast. We have been called to the feast.